The bright lights of the examination room made James blink as he sat on the floating medical platform. Dr. Root, the head medical officer of the Galactic Council, moved his 4 arms in precise patterns as he operated the scanning equipment. 2 of his large black eyes focused on the readings while the other 2 watched James with obvious concern. "Please remain still, Ambassador," Dr. Root said through the translator. His green scales shifted color slightly as he worked, a sign of growing distress that James had learned to recognize during his first week at the Galactic Council station. The doctor's assistant, who looked like a tall blue crystal with floating tentacles, suddenly backed away from the medical console. "Doctor, these readings cannot be correct. The scanner must be malfunctioning." Dr. Root moved closer to the screen, all 4 eyes now wide open. "Run the scan again," he ordered, his voice crackling with static through the translator. James sat patiently as the blue light passed over his body for the 3rd time. He had expected some surprise at human biology, but the medical team's reaction seemed extreme. Their behavior reminded him of his first day on the station, when he had accidentally scared a group of delegates by eating a spicy meal in the dining hall. "Impossible," Dr. Root whispered. "Ambassador, your species, you constantly produce toxins through your skin." "Oh, you mean sweat?" James smiled. "Yes, it's how we cool down. It's mostly water and salt." The crystal assistant's tentacles curled tightly. "You leak water and minerals intentionally, through thousands of tiny holes in your outer layer." "Well, yes. All humans do it. It's perfectly normal for us," James explained, watching as Dr. Root's scales turned an even paler shade of green. The doctor moved to another console, his 4 hands typing rapidly. "And these readings about your internal repair systems. You can heal from broken bones, regrow damaged organs, continue functioning with significant blood loss." "That's right," James nodded, "though the healing takes time, of course. My cousin once broke his leg skiing and was walking again in just a few months." The crystal assistant made a high-pitched sound that the translator couldn't process. Dr. Root's scales now showed patches of white, a color James had never seen on him before. "And this," Dr. Root pointed at another screen with a trembling hand, "your species regularly consumes substances that would be lethal to most council races. For pleasure." James thought for a moment. "You mean like coffee and spices?" "Yes, many humans start their day with caffeine. It helps us wake up." The medical team exchanged looks of horror. Dr. Root's voice was barely a whisper when he spoke again. "You intentionally consume nerve toxins to become more alert." Before James could explain further, alarms started blaring throughout the medical bay. The crystal assistant had connected their findings to the main council database, triggering multiple safety protocols. "Emergency council session," Dr. Root announced, his scales now completely white. "We must inform the others immediately. Ambassador, please, stay here." James watched as the medical team hurried out, leaving him alone in the examination room. Through the large window, he could see various alien delegates rushing past, some changing colors, others extending mourning appendages. A few stopped to stare at him with expressions he couldn't quite read on their non-human faces. He sighed and pulled out his personal tablet. Might as well send a message to Earth's diplomatic office while he waited. "First detailed medical examination completed," he typed. "Expect some concerns about human biology from the Council. Might need those orientation videos we discussed. Also, probably shouldn't mention the whole humans can eat capsaicin for fun thing during tomorrow's dinner." As he sat there, James could hear the station's announcement system activating in multiple alien languages. He caught the words "emergency session" and "biological anomaly" several times. This was going to be an interesting day in human-alien relations, he thought, as he watched more delegates hurrying past, now giving his medical room an even wider berth than before. The main council chamber was in chaos. Delegates from over 50 alien species filled the circular room, their voices, clicks, and electronic communications creating a storm of noise. Dr. Root stood at the central platform, his green scales still showing patches of white as he prepared to present his findings. The council leader, a tall being made of shifting silver mist contained within a transparent shell, raised 3 energy tendrils for silence. The chamber gradually grew quiet. Dr. Root, the council leader's voice echoed through the translation system. Present your medical findings about the human ambassador. Dr. Root's 4 hands moved quickly over the control panel, bringing up a holographic display of the human body. Several delegates immediately turned away or covered their sensing organs. Respected council members, Dr. Root began, his voice shaking. What I am about to share will disturb many of you. The human species demonstrates biological features that challenge our understanding of survivable life forms. The hologram zoomed in on a human skeleton. Humans possess an internal framework of mineral deposits they call bones. When these break, Dr. Root paused, his scales rippling. They can heal themselves. The broken pieces naturally reconnect and become whole again. A wave of shocked murmurs filled the chamber. A delegate with glowing tentacles raised one appendage. Surely they become non-functional until the repair is complete. No, Dr. Root replied. They often continue walking and performing tasks during the healing process. Several delegates immediately left their seats, heading for the chamber's calming rooms. The council leader's misty form swirled faster, showing agitation. There's more, Dr. Root continued. He changed the display to show the human circulatory system. Humans can lose up to 40% of their blood volume and survive. Their bodies will naturally produce more blood to replace what was lost. A delegate made entirely of crystalline shapes fell over, their form temporarily losing cohesion from shock. Furthermore, Dr. Root said, changing the display again, humans can regrow damaged organs. Their liver, for example, can regenerate up to 25% of its mass if damaged. They also constantly replace their outer protection layer called skin, and can heal from most surface wounds. The chamber erupted again. The council leader had to release calming pheromones into the air to restore order. Meanwhile, in the waiting room outside, James sat reading news from Earth on his tablet. He looked up as another group of delegates hurried past his door, some changing colors rapidly while others emitted distress signals in various forms of light and sound. Back in the chamber, Dr. Root reached the most disturbing part of his presentation. Most shocking of all is their method of maintaining internal temperature. Humans leak water through their skin containing various minerals and proteins. They call this process sweating. This allows them to remain active for extended periods, even in high temperatures. A delegate with 6 wings and iridescent feathers stood up. Are you saying they can pursue prey until it collapses from exhaustion? Yes, Dr. Root confirmed. In their early history, this was one of their hunting methods. They would follow prey animals for hours or days until the prey could no longer run. The chamber fell silent. The kind of endurance predator Dr. Root described was unheard of in the known galaxy. The council leader's misty form had turned a pale gray. And what are your recommendations, Doctor? Dr. Root's scales finally settled back to their normal green as he reached his conclusion. While humans possess many concerning biological features, they have shown no hostility. Their ambassador has been cooperative and transparent about their biology. I recommend continued diplomatic relations, but with new safety protocols in place. As the council debated this recommendation, an aide rushed in and whispered something to Dr. Root. The doctor's scales instantly went white again. Council leader, he interrupted, I've just been informed that the human ambassador is in the dining hall, consuming chemicals that would kill most of us, for what he calls lunch. The chamber erupted into chaos once more. The grand dining hall of the Galactic Council station sparkled under the light of 3 artificial suns. Delegates from across the galaxy gathered for the first official diplomatic dinner with human representation. Special arrangements had been made after the morning's revelations. James now had his own table, set slightly apart from the others. Dr. Root stood nearby, medical scanner in one of his 4 hands, monitoring the situation. His scales had finally returned to their normal green. though they still showed occasional flashes of pale color whenever James took a bite of food. "I assure you all," James said to the nervous delegates, "human eating habits are completely safe for everyone else." He picked up one of the strange alien utensils, a sort of twisted crystal rod that changed color based on the food's temperature. The council leader's misty form hovered at the main table. "We appreciate your reassurances, Ambassador. However, after this morning's medical report, we must be cautious." James nodded politely, though he found it hard not to smile at how a simple medical examination had turned into such a diplomatic challenge. He turned his attention back to the meal, carefully handling the color-changing utensil. That's when it happened. The crystal rod slipped in his hand, its sharp edge catching his palm. A small line of red appeared, and a drop of blood fell onto the white tablecloth. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. A delegate with floating tentacles shot up to the ceiling in panic. 3 crystalline beings vibrated so intensely their outer layers began to crack. The council leader's misty form turned completely white. "Containment breach," someone shouted through the translator. "The human is leaking vital fluids." James quickly pulled out his handkerchief. "It's just a small cut," he said calmly, pressing the cloth against his palm. "Nothing to worry about." But his attempts at reassurance only made things worse. Dr. Root rushed forward, scanner beeping rapidly. "Ambassador," the doctor's voice crackled through the translator, "you are damaged. We must get you to medical immediately." James lifted the handkerchief, showing the small cut. "Look, it's already clotting. It'll be fine in a few minutes." The sight of the blood clotting in real time sent another wave of panic through the dining hall. Several delegates who had been cautiously returning to their seats rushed back to the far walls. "It's sealing itself," a winged delegate asked, feathers puffing up in distress. "Without medical intervention." "Of course," James replied, reaching into his pocket. "Look, I even have a small bandage with me. This happens all the time." The casual way he said "all the time" caused 3 more delegates to flee the dining hall. Dr. Root's scanner was making increasingly urgent sounds. "Ambassador, you're telling us humans regularly suffer damage to their protective layer, and just continue with their activities." James finished applying the bandage. "Well, yes. Small cuts and scrapes are just part of life. Our bodies are very good at dealing with minor injuries." The council leader drifted closer, their misty forms still pale, but showing signs of curious swirling patterns. "And you carry medical supplies with you, expecting such incidents." "Just band-aids," James shrugged. "It's pretty common. Most humans keep a few with them." The revelation that humans routinely carried emergency medical supplies, expecting regular damage to their bodies, sent a new wave of murmurs through the dining hall. Dr. Root's scales had developed several new patterns the translator couldn't quite interpret. "Council leader," he said, "I believe we need to update the human biological hazard assessment again." James looked at his bandaged hand, then at the barely touched dinner in front of him. "Would it help if I promised not to cut myself again during the meal?" A delegate who looked like a floating cloud of blue gas drifted past. "The human speaks of controlling its biological functions as if it were normal." "For us, it is normal," James said, picking up his utensil again, more carefully this time. "Now shall we continue with dinner? I'm quite interested in trying that color-changing food in the floating bowl." The dining hall fell silent except for the soft hum of environmental systems and the distinct sound of several delegates activating their personal shield generators. The Defense Committee of the Galactic Council met in their secure chamber deep within the station. Red warning lights pulsed softly along the walls as 12 of the most experienced military minds in the galaxy reviewed the human medical data. General Brightcore, a being of pure energy contained in a mechanical suit, stood at the main display. The hologram showed James running on what the humans called a treadmill during his medical examination. "This cannot be right." The general's voice crackled through the translator. "The human has been moving at this pace for 30 minutes without stopping." Dr. Root, who had been called to explain his findings, nodded nervously. His scales showed a mix of green and white patterns. Yes, and according to Ambassador James, this is what humans call a light jog. They can maintain this movement for hours. The military leaders exchanged worried looks. A commander with crystalline armor raised a glowing appendage. How do they power such continuous movement? Their bodies. Dr. Root paused, his scales rippling. Their bodies actually become stronger with repeated stress. They call it exercise. They deliberately strain their muscles to make them more powerful. The chamber filled with urgent clicking and buzzing as the committee members communicated their alarm. Let me understand this clearly. General Brightcore's mechanical suit shifted position. Humans intentionally damage their muscle fibers, knowing these fibers will rebuild stronger. Correct. Dr. Root brought up new data. They even have special buildings called gyms where they gather to damage and repair their bodies systematically. A security officer made of shifting black smoke leaked stress particles into the air, and their endurance capabilities. The sweating mechanism. Dr. Root changed the display to show human thermal readings. Humans can regulate their temperature through liquid excretion, allowing them to remain active in conditions that would disable most species. In their history, they would often pursue prey until it collapsed from heat exhaustion. A species of pursuit predators, General Brightcore's energy form flickered intensely, with enhanced healing abilities and deliberate body enhancement practices. Meanwhile, unaware of the defense meeting, James was doing his morning exercises in his quarters. He had set up a small workout area after learning the station's gravity was slightly lower than Earth's. He didn't want to lose muscle mass during his diplomatic mission. Back in the Defense Committee chamber, the discussion had turned to human combat potential. Their bones, a commander with metallic feathers spoke, they heal from breaks, and they continue fighting with damaged limbs. Yes, Dr. Root confirmed. Ambassador James mentioned something called adrenaline that allows humans to temporarily ignore pain and continue functioning even with significant injuries. General Brightcore's energy form pulsed brightly, and they consider this normal. These abilities don't require technological enhancement. All natural biology. Dr. Root's scales showed fresh patterns of white. They evolved these traits over millions of years. The committee fell silent, processing this information. Finally, General Brightcore spoke again. Recommendations. A military advisor with 6 eyes raised 3 arms. Classify humans as a potential Class A military species. Their physical capabilities combined with their technological advancement make them. The advisor was interrupted by an urgent message on the main screen. The station's security system had detected unusual activity in the human ambassador's quarters. The video feed showed James doing something the aliens found incomprehensible: push-ups. By the void, General Brightcore's energy form flickered rapidly. The human is repeatedly lifting its entire body mass, for no apparent reason. Dr. Root checked his medical scanner. According to my data, this is part of their regular exercise routine. They do this daily. The Defense Committee watched in horrified fascination as James switched to sit-ups. Update the classification, General Brightcore ordered. Add a note. Humans deliberately stress their bodies for enhancement purposes. Standard containment protocols may be insufficient. As the committee drafted their report, James finished his workout, completely unaware that his morning exercise routine had just classified humanity as one of the galaxy's most physically formidable species. The security briefing room was tense as Officer Metal Spark, a being composed of interlocking silver plates, reviewed the station's new human safety protocols. James sat in the back, trying not to smile as he watched the presentation. Remember, Metal Spark's translator crackled. Humans can maintain consciousness even after significant physical damage. Always maintain a safe distance of at least 3 body lengths. A soft chime interrupted the briefing. The council leader's misty form appeared on the main screen. Officer Metal Spark, please bring Ambassador James to Chamber 3. The trade representative from the Dust Worlds wishes to discuss mining rights. As they walked to Chamber 3, James noticed increased security presence in the corridors. The station's guards watched him carefully, their sensors tracking his every move. He was getting used to it after the past few days of excitement. The trade representative, a floating cloud of red particles, held together by an energy field, waited in the chamber. Two security drones hovered nearby, their sensors focused on James. Ambassador, the representative's particles swirled agitatedly. Your species' request for mining rights in the Outer Rim is unacceptable. You lack the necessary experience in space mining. Actually, James began, humans have been mining in space for. Silence. The representative's cloud form turned dark red. Your primitive species should learn its place. Before anyone could react, the representative's energy field lashed out, striking toward James. Officer Metal Spark moved to intervene, but what happened next would become legendary in Council security footage. James caught the energy tendril in his hand, ignoring the mild burn. In the same motion, he twisted and bit down hard on the energy field projector hidden within the representative's particle cloud. The room froze. The representative's particle cloud scattered in shock as their energy field collapsed. The security drones backed away, their sensors overloading from the unexpected display of human jaw strength. Officer Metal Spark's plates rattled in disbelief. Did the human just use its food processing bones as a weapon? James spat out the now crushed projector. Sorry about that. Natural reflex. On Earth, using your teeth is sometimes the best defense when your hands are occupied. The security team that burst into the room found an unusual scene. The trade representative's particles huddled in a corner, Officer Metal Spark repeatedly reviewing sensor footage, and James calmly checking his teeth in a reflective surface. Dr. Root arrived minutes later, medical scanner already buzzing. Ambassador, your mouth cavity. You used it for combat. Well, biting isn't our first choice, James explained, but human jaws are pretty strong. We used to need them for tough foods back in our early days. The doctor's scales turned a new shade of white as he scanned James's mouth. Your species retained powerful jaw muscles and dense teeth as a backup weapon system. I wouldn't call it a weapon system, James shrugged. It's just part of our biology. Though I should mention, human bites usually heal without infection thanks to our immune system. This casual mention of bacterial resistance caused Officer Metal Spark's plates to rattle again. They can neutralize foreign contaminants after using their mouth in combat. The station's alert system activated, announcing new security protocols regarding human biological capabilities. In the medical bay, where the trade representative was being treated for shock, Dr. Root updated his report on human anatomy. Addendum to human biological assessment, he dictated, his scales still showing stress patterns. Subject demonstrates previously unknown defensive capabilities. Jaw strength exceeds safety projections. Immune system can counter potential infection from bite combat. Recommend immediate update to all security guidelines. James sat in the security office, filling out incident reports. He looked up as another group of wide-eyed delegates hurried past the door, now giving him even more space than before. I don't suppose, he said to Officer Metal Spark, that this will help our mining rights application. The officer's plates shifted in what might have been a laugh. Ambassador, after today's demonstration, I believe the Council will be very careful about denying humans anything they request. The medical research wing of the station buzzed with unusual activity. Dr. Root had called an emergency meeting of the Galactic Medical Council after making several breakthrough discoveries about human biology. His research room was packed with the top medical minds from 30 different species. James sat on an examination table, surrounded by curious alien doctors. After the bite incident, interest in human biological capabilities had shifted from fear to fascination. Observe, Dr. Root said, his scales now showing excited patterns of bright green. He displayed a microscopic view of James's blood cells. Human blood can carry oxygen more efficiently than any known species, and they can voluntarily donate it to help others. A doctor made of floating light particles moved closer to the screen. They deliberately remove their vital fluids to save others of their kind. Yes, James explained, rolling up his sleeve. Most humans donate blood regularly. Our bodies just make more. The room filled with astonished murmurs. A medical researcher with crystalline tentacles raised 3 appendages. And this process is voluntary, without payment. Usually, yes, James nodded. We even have mobile donation centers that travel around collecting blood from willing donors. Dr. Root's scales flickered with excitement as he changed the display to show human cell regeneration. But that's not all. Their healing capabilities exceed anything in our medical database. Watch this time-lapse of a minor wound healing. The assembled doctors watched in amazement as the recording showed James's small cut from the dining incident healing over several hours. Their bodies, Dr. Root explained, naturally fight infection, repair damage, and even adapt to new threats. They call it an immune system. A medical officer with glowing antennae floated forward. Are you saying they have internal defensive organisms that fight invaders? Precisely. Dr. Root switched to another display. And these defenders remember previous threats, becoming stronger against repeat attacks. Meanwhile, in the station's main medical bay, several alien patients watched in fascination as a human medical team demonstrated Earth first aid techniques. The concept of bandages and stitches had caused quite a stir. Back in the research room, Dr. Root was reaching his most significant finding. Most remarkably, humans can share compatible organs and tissues with other humans. They call it transplant surgery. The room erupted in shocked discussions. A doctor made of swirling gas had to activate their stabilization field to avoid dispersing from excitement. They remove functional organs from one human and place them in another. A voice asked from the back. Yes, James said. People can sign up to be organ donors. If something happens to them, their healthy organs can save others. Dr. Root's scales showed a new pattern of blue-green excitement. The implications for galactic medicine are enormous. Human healing techniques could revolutionize our understanding of biological repair. The council leader's misty form appeared at the doorway. Dr. Root, your report is causing quite a stir. Half the council wants to establish immediate medical cooperation with Earth. James smiled. After days of causing panic with human biological features, it was nice to see them being viewed as beneficial. There is one more thing, Dr. Root added, bringing up a final display. Humans can rebuild bone density and muscle mass through intentional stress. They could potentially adapt to various gravity environments naturally, without technological assistance. The medical team crowded around the new data, their various appendages, tentacles, and sensor organs all focused on the readings. Ambassador, the council leader's mist swirled thoughtfully. Would Earth be interested in establishing a joint medical research program? James nodded. I think that could be arranged. Though you might want to prepare your medical staff for some of our more unusual treatments. Like what? Dr. Root asked, his scales showing curious patterns. Well, James grinned, wait until you learn about how we use beneficial bacteria in our digestive systems. The room fell silent for a moment before erupting into a new wave of excited scientific discussions. Dr. Root's scales turned a brilliant shade of green as he realized human biology still had many more surprises to reveal. The main council chamber looked very different from when James had first arrived. The protective shields that had been installed after his medical examination were now gone. The special containment field around his seat had been deactivated. Even Dr. Root's scales had settled into a permanent pattern of confident green. The council leader's misty form hovered at the center of the chamber, addressing the assembled delegates. 1 month has passed since we first discovered the unique features of human biology. Today, we vote on full membership status for Earth. James sat calmly, drinking what the aliens now called nerve toxin stimulant, or as humans called it, coffee. Several delegates watched with familiar fascination as he sipped the hot liquid that would have paralyzed most species. Before we vote, the council leader continued, Dr. Root will present his final assessment. Dr. Root stepped forward, his medical scanner now permanently set to human normal mode. Respected council members, my complete study of human biology has led to some remarkable conclusions. The holographic display activated, showing a compilation of the past month's events, James healing from the dining incident, the security footage of the bite incident, and clips from various medical demonstrations. While humans possess biological features that initially terrified us, Dr. Root explained, these same features offer unprecedented opportunities. Their healing abilities, immune system, and adaptive biology have already helped us develop 3 new medical treatments. A delegate with crystalline wings raised a glowing appendage. But what about the safety concerns? Their endurance predator history. James suppressed a smile as he remembered the panic his morning jogs had caused during the first week. Actually, Dr. Root's scales showed a hint of amusement. Human persistence hunting techniques have helped us improve our search and rescue protocols. Their ability to maintain activity under stress has proven invaluable in emergency situations. The council leaders' form swirled thoughtfully. And the military implications. The Defense Committee has revised their assessment. A general made of pure energy spoke up. Humans are now classified as protected allies rather than potential threats. Their defensive capabilities make them ideal peacekeeping partners. James took another sip of coffee, remembering how that classification had changed after he helped stop a rogue maintenance bot by simply running after it until its power cells died. Furthermore, Dr. Root added, bringing up new data, the human practice of exercise has inspired a revolution in biological enhancement research. Several species have already adapted human training techniques to their own physiologies. The display showed footage of various aliens attempting modified versions of human exercises, including a group of energy beings doing what they called light stretching based on yoga. Most importantly, the council leader concluded, humans have shown consistently that their unusual biological features are matched by their willingness to help others. Their medical donation programs, emergency response systems, and adaptive teaching methods have already improved life on this station. James stood up as the council leader turned to address him directly. He noticed that none of the delegates flinched at his movement anymore. Ambassador, the misty form shifted to a formal pattern. The council has reached a decision. Earth is hereby granted full membership status, with special recognition for human biological contributions to galactic medicine and safety. The chamber filled with the various sounds of alien applause, from crystalline, chiming to energy pulse waves. Additionally, the council leader added, we request permission to distribute Dr. Root's new manual, Human Biology, a guide to understanding our remarkably resilient allies. Permission granted, James smiled, though you might want to add a footnote about our ability to laugh. Some species are still getting alarmed by those sudden noises. Dr. Root's scales showed a pattern that James had learned meant amusement, already included in Chapter 7, unexpected joy expressions, and other harmless human behaviors. As the council chamber filled with celebrating delegates, James reflected on how far they'd come. From being seen as terrifying biological anomalies to valued allies in just 1 month. He made a mental note to update Earth's diplomatic office about the success, though perhaps he'd leave out the part about how his morning push-ups had inspired a new form of alien physical training called controlled stress enhancement. Some things were better experienced in person.